This conference will now be recorded.
She sometimes speaks in Spanish. Today I have the English version. I think we have a pretty interesting presentation, and also that is going to be able to involve the group. So we're going to have a project that we've created, a BIM Server Center, that if anybody wants to join, we'll be able to share with them. And we're going to try to just keep building into that same project.
Nice.
All right.
I mean, there's so many tools. When I was looking, it's like, wow. It's even the COVID thing and.
Yeah, the COVID was something we took out real fast. The thing is that we have two very powerful structural tools that we've developed for many years of working on them, and we know that we have to develop loose tools to afterwards put them together. The great thing is that right now we're in that process. We're starting to group some of them. But yeah, eventually, the point's going to be that we're going to have groupings for architectural, groupings for, which is good and bad, but when you think about that, you sometimes you get tied into long subscriptions because the license is tied up to too many things. And maybe you have something you use twice a year, but you also have something in that software that you use daily and it's making you spend a lot in subscriptions. So I don't know, you can look at it both ways, Sometimes loose programs are also positive if you're starting off or if you just need a certain solution. So we're trying to keep everything available for the user.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes people see it that they work with something that's under a whole umbrella and they're like, hey, think about it. What are you spending on maintaining this? Maybe one person in our office needs it, but not every single guy needs to have all the software in their office installed. And that's an extra cost. That's the way we look at it.
That's right. Yeah.
How's the weather out there in Vancouver? It's quite cold, no?
Yeah, it's a fall day.
Yeah, we could see.
It's a little dry right now, but cloudy. Yeah.
Yeah, today's really dropped. It's 9 degrees Celsius here in Alicante.
Yeah, I think maybe just because I know people are on their lunch break, we can kick it off. And
Perfect.
That way we can make the most use of the time because I'm sure there's a lot to show.
Anything that we could share the recording, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen and I'll make sure to.
Yeah, and I'll just say a brief welcome to everyone who's connected.
Yeah, go ahead, get started.
See a few people there, and welcome to BIMbc Vancouver. We're picking up this presentation from Sipe's software, and we're actually having a series. So this first one is trying to target more of the architecture end of things. In 2 weeks, we'll have another lunchtime presentation. We'll be releasing the details shortly for a more structural approach. We know that we have quite a few structural engineers who come to our meetings. And then the 26th, also a Friday at noon, lunchtime presentation, we'll have another presentation which will be focused on the mechanical and electrical portions and the suite of tools that you have. So with that, I'll just let you take it away, Jaime and David. Thank you.
All right, perfect.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us, and I'm gonna go ahead and probably turn off my camera so like that I could get a better recording of this. Hey, hold on, where do we get this here? It's camera, hold on. And then we'll just go ahead and get started. All right, so everybody, welcome all the members. I'm gonna go pretty quick. It's only like 3 or 4 or 5 slides, not much. But just to give it a little bit of I want to kind of set the mood for everybody to understand the software and the workflow and what we do a little bit. Once that David starts talking, so you have a little bit of an idea, because he's gonna go ahead and start working on a program designing right away. So Sipe, we've been around for over 38 years. It's a company that's made up of over 200 professionals who've been developing software for architectural engineering and construction. Started with structures, and we have plenty of solutions that you will see shortly. And I think our engineers here connected to Diego. Hello. Then we'll have some MEP. We also brought out a lot of MEP tools and energy efficiency from thermal analysis, acoustic, fire safety, even an FDS engine, HVAC, etc. And lastly, we've developed a lot of architectural tools, and we also have project management tools, which you will be seeing some of these shortly. Now, it's a worldwide company with over 140,000 users. Our main markets are South America, Europe, Africa, but we apply the most codes and standards of any software of its kind, including Canadian standards in steel and in concrete, and also US standards, et cetera. And we're always adding new things. Now, there's two ways that you can download programs that are used for designing with Sipe, and then afterwards link them to our BIM workflow. And the way that is, the first one, which is Sipe Suite Programs, which this you can download at sipe.com. Once you download one of these two, I'll put it on the chat now. Once you have it, you will see the picture on the right, which is the landing page, and that's a grouping of programs. Primarily our two main structural design programs, which they'll be talking about next week. And then you have all of the BIM Server Center programs, which are loose programs that you can download. Some are free, some are very inexpensive. They're all perpetual licenses in both the suite programs and the others. And now these programs can also communicate with BIM Server Center. So these are the ways to access and download programs, or this is where you do it for both parts of the suite. Now, the next thing is the workflow. You don't have to download any programs to access the workflow or to be able to use these project management tools. All you need to do is sign up to BIM Server Center. And then you're able to use this cloud that has plenty of virtual reality tools, a lot of different tools for your projects, for you to view. You can run clash detections and notify people in the project. And all this is the workflow, which is completely free. Anybody could sign up and anybody can be part of a program without actually downloading and designing. You might just want people to participate, okay? Once you've loaded a program into Sipe, once you've exported back into the platform, you're able to access for viewing, for measuring, all of the different layers that you've imported from our software or sometimes from other software. You're able to layer this project as thick or as thin, and obviously now David will get into the details, but that's just the main idea and thought that I wanted to leave everybody with. Okay, so that's going to be the end of my part. Now I'm going to have David share his screen. I'm making him presenter as we speak, and he's going to go ahead and get started. He's an architect from the University of Alicante, very talented individual. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much. Okay, so right now I'm going to share with you a link so you can access this project right here that I'm showing you. So you can see how along these following weeks we will be working on top of all these files that we'll be uploading here in BIM Server Center. So today I'm going to show you the basic tools that we use here at Sipe for developing the architectural part of our programs. And that is, if you go to the BIM Server Center store, you will see that we have a bundle of programs called BIM Essentials by Sipe. And here we have mostly free tools that you can use to start your project. You could either start with a modeling in CYPE Architecture, or in case you are more familiarized with Revit, you can also use our OpenBIM plugin, so you can communicate with Revit through BIM Server Center. Let's say, for example, that you were to start a project in Revit. So let's switch to Revit right here. And as you can see here, I've got a project already modeled waiting to be uploaded to BIM Server Center. All I have to do is go to the Add-ins tab and use our plugin right here. We can link this project to one of the projects that we have available, or we can create a new one In this case, I've already created one project, so we can upload the Ifc file that will be generated. And from then on, we can select if we want to import any of the files that are already generated there. In this case, I've done this previously, and if we were to switch to BIM Server Center, you would see that I have here another project, which a series of files that have been generated thanks to this plugin, from which then on I can be able to start working on top of the architecture of this project, as you can see here in the 3D viewer. In case you want to completely avoid working with Revit, one of the other ways that you can start setting the architectural definition of your project is through the essentials tools that I've talked before. In this case, we would start either first with Sipe Architecture, which is our main 3D modeling tool, or we could start first, for example, with OpenBIM, which is one of the latest tools that we have developed recently for geolocalization of projects. So in this case, I first start with OpenBIM. So let's switch to OpenBIM. And as you can see here, this program is meant as a way of having a basic information of all the surrounding environment of our project. The first thing that you have to do is set a series of general parameters so you can geolocate your project either manually, as you can see here that I've done, or through the use of a series of databases from around the world. Right now, we only have the Spanish databases, but in the near future, we will be adding as many different databases from around the world as possible. In this case, I've manually set this project here in Canada, and as you can see here, it has automatically imported all the following contours of all the different plots, as well as the buildings. So once we have all the data loaded from the general parameters, we can continue with a series of maps that we can use to complement our process, like this ones I'm showing right now, either aerial views or topographical maps like this one. We can also import automatically the plots, and from then on edit to our liking. As you can see here, we can edit all the different segments and nodes of each individual plot. And the same thing would apply to our buildings. This is very useful in the development of your project because from one single step, you can set all the different variables that will define your project and its environment. In the near future, we will be able to set data like, for example, geotechnical data, or right now, from what we have, you can be able to set just from the location itself, all the different data that will be used in the energy efficiency calculations, the climate, and so on. So once we are done integrating our project in a built environment like so, we can also get topographic surfaces, which will be later imported into Sipe Architecture. Right now I have generated this topographic surface, and if I want to, I can add it here in the reference maps like so. This will be mostly the end of what we would do here in OpenBIM, and as you can see here in the top right corner, in each and every program we will have a tab dedicated exclusively for BIM Server Center. In this case, we can either export directly to our project, or we can skip and go directly to our architectural model. I've already exported this Ifc file, and I've opened another file in Sipe Architecture, so we can start modeling the architecture of our project. Let's switch once to Sipe Architecture. Let's close here OpenBIM, and you will see what I'm talking about. In this case, I have already made here a single detached house, and we're going to work on a very little addition here. Could be a shed or an additional dwelling unit, like that, so to speak. And as you can see here, if I update my model with 3D view, I will be able to include the topographical data that I was talking about before. This has all been imported from the project that I have here in BIM Server Center. And if you go to the Contents tab, you will see that indeed right now we have an Ifc file containing all the different site and location data. So let's go back once more to Sipe Architecture, and let's start with the modeling itself. As you can see here, the program is quite straightforward. You can work either in a 2D view with custom views that you can create, such as floor views, elevations, sections, and so on, or you can work directly in the 3D view. At the same time, you can organize all the elements that you insert into the drawing sketch in layers, or later when we work with one of the other programs for layout, you would see that we can also go along the BIM model and filter all the different elements that have been introduced. As you can see on the top left corner of the screen, we have 3 tabs called Sketch, Architecture, and Furniture. And that is because we don't have one single workflow inside Sipe Architecture, but instead we give the user the freedom to start either with a sketch that will work more or less like other modeling programs like SketchUp, for example, or AutoCAD. And from then on, turn everything that has been inserted into the Sketch tab into architectural elements. I've shown you before here the BIM model tab, and that is so you can see that each individual element that will be inserted here through the architecture tab will be turned into an Ifc entity with all its different properties, as you can see here. Another way of starting your project here in Sipe Architecture would be, instead of working with sketches, to use a template that is a drawing imported in a DXF or DW file, and from then on use that as a basis to start drawing on top of it. In this case, what we will do is that we will switch directly to the Sketch tab, and I will show you what are the main capabilities of this tab for itself. So let's switch, for example, to a floor view, like so, and let's create a new layer that will contain all the different elements that we will be modeling right now. As you can see, the layers are a way of organizing data so we can keep a clearer view of what we're doing at each and every step of the project. And they do not correspond to individual kinds of elements. So a layer can contain as many kinds of different elements as you may want to, either from the Sketch tab, the Architecture tab, or the Furniture tab. So let's switch to this new layer that I'm going to name Shed. And this layer will contain all the different elements from the Sketch, Architecture, Furniture tabs for our addition to this model. Let's zoom in and let's start first here through the Sketch tab. We could go with references, or we could start drawing freehand with the drawing tools that we have here. In this case, I'm going to start with a rectangle, like so. Let me first, deactivate this layer right here so we have a better view of the model. And let's start drawing. When we start drawing in a 2D view or a 3D view, we have the option to force either to stuck to a 2D mode, so each individual point that we're going to draw is going to be projected on the nearest surface, like so, or we can work directly in a 3D mode if you were to switch, for example, to a 3D view. So now, for example, all our drawings would be sketched freely on the 3D space instead of being forced to a 2D view like we did before. Let's continue and let's insert this rectangle. We can either force a series of magnitudes when we are introducing our elements, or we can set them as freehand like I'm doing right now. You may be asking, why did we differentiate between a Sketch tab and an Architecture tab? And that is because what we are going to introduce into the Architecture tab is going to be turned into BIM model entities. So the Sketch tab serves more as a helping hand when you're starting to draw in a 3D space all your architecture. In this case, for example, if we were to introduce a series of horizontal elements, like for example, a slab, I would be able to turn this surface into a slab if I switch to the entry mode by surface area, like so. But let's not get ahead of our game right now, and let's continue with the Sketch tab. As I was saying, the Sketch tab contains many basic drawing tools, and one of the perks of having this workflow divided into different tabs is that all these tools do not collide with each other. So for example, if I were to delete an entity that has been inserted into the Sketch tab, it would not interact with the rest of elements that have been introduced with the architecture and furniture tabs. Let's say that we have finished with the definition of our basic sketch here in the Sketch tab, and let's continue with the Architecture tab. As you can see here, we have the aforementioned BIM Model tab, which serves as a way of keeping track of all the different elements that we have inserted into the model and how they will be treated later when we export them into an Ifc file. As you can see here, we have them sorted by construction elements like walls, floors, roofs, and so on, as well as openings, connections, and spaces. Spaces will be useful later when we export this model when we are working with MEP solutions. Now let's continue with the Architecture tab, and you will see here that we have in the Construction Elements tab a series of tools for vertical, horizontal, roofs, openings, and connection elements. In this case, let's start, for example, with vertical elements, and let's add columns. These columns will be later treated as native elements when we work with them with the rest of structural solutions that we have, like, for example, SipeCAD. So once we finish with the vertical elements, let's continue, for example, to the horizontal elements, and let's add some beams. As you can see here, all the time what I'm doing is that I'm assigning a level to each element, a reference that can be automatically set by default, as you can see here, and as well as the series of properties. These properties can be used throughout the model, and they are an easy way of setting a series of labels that can be later exported when we are working with other software, like the structural software that I've mentioned before. You may have mentioned that we have here an interesting tool called Insertion Point, and that is because we are working in a free space, we can set freely on which point we will set as a reference when we're working with a cursor in the free space. In this case, you have to imagine that this graphic is a kind of section of the element that we're working with, in this case, a beam, and the cursor that we're selecting here will correspond to the cursor that we are working here in the free space. So in this case, I'm selecting the middle top part of this beam, and let me first allow the objects now for midpoints, and I'm going to use the midpoints of our columns as a basis. Let's add some beams like so. Sorry, we have to set first the ground on which we're going, the floor, the level on which we're going to set it. This will be relevant because it will be taken into account when we export the Ifc file. It doesn't matter if we have drawn this beam on a lower or upper level, it will be assigned to the level that we have assigned it here. So let's continue with the introduction of these elements like so. And once we have it, we will have the basic structure of our shed right here. Later, when we switch to the 3D view, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, we have finished the introduction of the structure, and if we go to 3D view, you will see that indeed we have a series of columns and beams that have been introduced for our basic structure. So let's switch back once more to the floor view here for the ground floor, and let's continue with the introduction of vertical elements, like, for example, walls. But as you may see, it's not limited to walls. We could also insert curtain walls, louvers, railings, and so on. So in this case, let's insert a wall, And as you can see here, we have once more either the option to force to a 2D mode or a 3D mode, and we have a properties tab in which we can set the reference, the level on which it will be located, as well as the entry modes, as I've shown you before. Each different kind of element has different kinds of entry modes, and in this case we have 3 basic entry modes. They are by polyline, as you may imagine here in a 2D or 3D view, by just assigning one line, by points in case we were to work with a more customized wall, so it doesn't really comply with what you would expect in an orthogonal model like this one. And then by surface area. By surface area, as I've shown you before, is a way of using everything that we have modeled before here in the Sketch tab, and it gives you more freedom as a way of defining a project that maybe goes further beyond of what you may expect of these kinds of traditional orthogonal boxes that we are modeling right now. So in this case, I'm going to work with by polyline, and as you can see here, we also have properties, and in this case, I will show you a series of descriptions that we have preloaded here before in this model, and that we can easily modify to our liking, like so. We can set which kind of categories are going to be: external, party wall, internal partition, basement wall, and so on. The thickness, as well as the colors. Colors are a way of setting surfaces with textures inside Sipe architecture. And last but not least, we have the adjustment. Just like we did before with the vertical and horizontal elements of our structure, we can set an adjustment in regards to this introduction and this cursor either in the middle part of our element or to the right or to the left, like so. Let's set it, for example, to the left on the interlined by polyline, and I'm going to set this type of enclosure a ethics facade, for example. And let's start drawing this wall like so. Once we finish introducing these elements, we will switch back to the 3D view and you will see the final result. Let's switch back to the 3D view, and ta-da! Indeed, now we have something that more or less resembles basic architecture. Let's switch back once more to the view, and let's continue, for example, with the openings tab right here. We can introduce freeform openings, doors, windows, skylights, or glazed surfaces. In this case, I'm going to insert, for example, a door. And as you can get the grip of what we're doing right now, this is more or less always the same mechanism. We start first with a properties tab, with the properties window, and in this properties window we can either create or load different kinds of typologies that have been set here in this model before, like for example this one. And each individual element, that you will see, has many different kinds of parameters that we can change inside Sipe architecture. Like for example, in this case, for doors, we have which kind of opening it can have. We have hinge doors, sliding doors, as well as the door dimensions, its width, height, frame weight. If it's going to have, for example, a glazed opening, and even we can get to such finer details as the type of handle that it's going to be. So I'm going to use this kind of door, and let's try to insert it into our model. Okay, I'm going to select this one right here. Let's click the tab and let's insert it into our model. I can either insert it in a 2D view or a 3D view like we're doing right now. And right now you can see here that the options window is quite similar to the ones that we have treated before. We have both insertion point and the adjustment for this case. The insertion point, you have to imagine that we are working with an elevation of the door. So this would be the lower middle part of the door. And the adjustment, you will see later why we're working with adjustments here. So in this case, I'm going to select, for example, here to insert my door at 1.5 meters. It's going to open into the interior part of our space here. And as you can see here, we have 3 dots. These 3 dots are a way of putting a flashing of your door either to the interior side of your wall, to the exterior, or either to keep it in the middle. And the same thing would apply here for the adjustment. So you can set your door to each 3 points right here, and at the same time force these 3 different kinds of adjustments. So for example, I could have a right to the line and to the interior, like so. And this would be your most classic use case scenario for this tool right here. Let's go back once more to the 3D view, and you can see that the program has automatically added my door with all the different properties I have set before, and as well as having created this void right here. You may run into trouble when you are working with a very complex model like this one. So you have here another tool called Intersection Solutions that can be used as a way of automatically solving all the different clashes that can happen when you have multiple elements colliding into each other when you are inserting them in the model. And as I was telling you before, we can also insert the different elements into a 3D view in case you are more confident working freely in a 3D space like so. Let's try, for example, adding a window. And as you may imagine, it works more or less the same as what we have done before with the doors. So I'm going to pick a different kind of window that I have here preloaded. Like, for example, this one. And once we have it, we can add it to our wall. As you can see, it automatically snaps to all the different vertical faces that we have here. So we don't have to worry about the positioning. One interesting characteristic about Windows is that you can also set a height above ground if you want to fine-tune your position here. In this case, we can also play around with the insertion points and the adjustments, so we can have a very precise insertion points like the ones I'm showing you right now. So for example, let's start it right here. Let's set where is it going to open. It's going to open into the interior side of our room. And once more, let's set, for example, an outer adjustment and flashed with the exterior wall, like so. Okay, now that we have the vertical elements and the openings, let's continue, for example, with the horizontal elements. So we can have the lower and upper sides of our shoebox that we're modeling right now. So let's go back here to horizontal elements, and let's go to floor slab, like so. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you one of the other entry modes that we have here, and that is the by points entry mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw here in the 3D space a top hat, so to speak, for our little shoebox. Let's activate the 3D mode. And once we have the 3D mode here working, you will see that my cursor automatically snaps to any reference point in a 3D space. So I'm going to make it lie above this line, and let's pick this point as a reference. And once we are done, we can sorry for the inconvenience. Let's make a break and reload the model. We were almost done, so don't worry.
The good thing is that what you're doing, it's saving it, so he doesn't have a problem with that. And I just wanted to mention one thing for everybody that works in Imperial method. The program also you can convert into Imperial method, and you're able to use it in this way also. Okay, that's correct, David?
Indeed, if we were to go here to this globe right here, we have an option to switch the different units to either metric or imperial in case you're more comfortable working with imperial units. So let me once and for all go back to Sipe Architecture, and let's continue with the autosave file. We have launched version 2022.c a couple of weeks ago, so that's one of the reasons that it's prone to error. So in case you were to stumble into an error, you feel free to keep in touch with us. Just send us an email at support@sipe.com, and we will help you through all the steps necessary to recover and to continue your progress. So let's continue here with our detached house. And let's finish with the modeling and switch to the furniture tab so you get an idea of the full potential of this program. Sorry if it's taking a little long. And all right, we're back here and just like where we left it off. So let's go back to the 3D view here where we were before, and let's switch once more to the ground floor view, and let's continue with the different elements of the architecture tab. Let's say that we have finished with the introduction of the horizontal elements, that is the roof and the floor slab for our little cottage right here. And let's continue with the spaces tab right here. This is not something that is required to have a functioning architectural model, but it's very useful when we're working later with other tools for thermal and acoustical analysis, because you can set a series of spaces that can be used later to calculate its thermal loads and so on. So in this case, you can create automatically spaces by polylines, or you can select the bounding elements of each space, and the program will automatically generate the space accordingly, like so. Spaces work more or less the same as construction elements, and you can set different types of different typologies of spaces that can be contained inside a project, like so. This will be useful later when we're working with other tools like the ones that I've told you before. So let's finish with the definition of this space. And now that we have a basic architectural definition of our model, we can switch to the furniture tab. Maybe the name may inspire you to think that it's something meant more for eye candy, but it's quite the opposite. In Sipe architecture, when we insert furniture, each and every element is treated as an Ifc entity, and this will be useful later when we're working, for example, with plumbing applications, or when you're working with open quantities or other budgeting software. If you want to nitpick and even go as far as to budget all the different furniture that will be integrated into the model. So let's try to add some more furniture here. I have already added, as you can see here, a table, chair, and so on. And as you can see here, we have all the different furniture divided between furniture, home appliances, and sanitary appliances. And that is because when we insert these objects, besides its 3D dimensions and its tags, we also can set more Ifc tags. Like, for example, for home appliances, we can set the electrical consumption that will be later treated in electrical software, like the ones that we have here, for example, for electrical mechanisms. And the same thing will apply for sanitary appliances. Let's insert, for example, a wash bin, like so, and you will see what I'm talking about. As you can see here, it works more or less the same that we have done up until now, and we can set a series of properties that will be later taken into account when we work with plumbing to calculate the different consumption levels of each element and so on. As you can see, the insertion of these kinds of elements is quite straightforward, and it's as easy as setting a displacement here, a rotation, and you will see that it automatically has an anchor point for your cursor. Same thing will apply for home appliances and furniture. Let's add some home appliances just to get the gist of it. And let's say, for example, that we were to add the refrigerator, like so. Right now, we have some pre-built models of all the different furniture elements I have shown you now, but in the future, different users will be able to upload their custom libraries of objects, like the ones that you can see here. Let's add it right here, for example. And now if we go back here to the BIM model tab, you will see that indeed all these elements have been inserted into our Ifc file. Okay, let's say that we have finished modeling our model here, both through the Sketch, Architecture, and Furniture tabs. And now it is time to export an Ifc file that will be treated for the rest of our applications. As you can see here, we have some suggestions for what could be your next steps, like for example, drawing composition, that I'm going to show you right now. As you can see here, we can share our Ifc files, we can generate it and upload it to our project. And once we have any kind of changes on the previous Ifc files that we have uploaded, you will see here that we will get a notification to update all the different data that has been imported into our project. In this case, because before we have set a new file for the site here on OpenBuild site, it is telling us to update our location. I've previously exported these into our BIM project, and I've made some sheets so you can see how OpenBuild layout works. OpenBuild layout is meant as a way of introducing all different kinds of Ifc files into a plotting software completely free of charge, so you can have all your different sheets in the same place. In this case, you can see that we're working mostly with architectural information, because up until now we just had an Ifc file for architecture. But in case we would have more Ifc files in our project, like for example structural or plumbing Ifcs, we could make different drawings for these kinds of Ifcs. So let's, for example, create a new sheet that will contain all the data that we have modeled before for our little shed. So as you can see here, we have in the Sheets tab a series of sheets that are grouped in groups of plans like these ones. And if we want to create a new sheet, it's as easy as setting a new name for the sheet, for example, shed. Adding it to a group, we're going to make a plan of this shed. We can set different kinds of formats for the paper, as you can see here. And in regards to templates, we can create, import, and export templates. I have some templates already preloaded here, and I'm going to show you later how you can create your very own templates here with the library. So let's create a new sheet. And if we go back here to the templates tab, you can see here that we have a library of preloaded templates. Templates are an easy way of having an easily repeatable way of having a title block for your models. And as you can see here, I have several templates that have a substitute text. That is, as you can see here, we have a series of blocks that have these percentage symbols in front of and after them. And that is because this text will be automatically changed into our database for substitute text that I'm going to show you later. So let's say that we have here a library already inserted, and we have created a new plan for our shed. So we can start drawing either with the Style tab right here, where we can add different kinds of elements like lines, text, fields, dimensions, and so on. We can create different styles for all these different elements that we're going to insert, like these ones that I have done previously. So we can reuse the same properties for different elements all throughout our sheets. Once we have our styles ready, we can start with the 3D scenes. Let's set a 3D scene, which is a way of setting a series of common denominators for our drawing of the 3D model. In this case, for example, we can create a new scene that will only contain architectural data. As you can see here in the outline tab, we have in the models subtab a series of tick boxes for all the different elements that we have inserted. So let's say that, for example, we wanted to make a scene that only contains furniture. We could easily tick back all these different checkboxes and leave only the furniture elements, like so. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a scene that only sets the construction, furniture, and bathrooms fittings, and gets rid of the spaces. Because if you recall correctly, we can also set the different spaces so we can treat them later for the thermal and acoustic analysis and so on. So I'm going to set these architectural models like so, with these categories as well. And once that we have our scene ready, we can start setting all the different views that we're going to be using throughout our project. Let's go back here to Drawing Elements 3D Scene tab, and let's insert a viewport for our new view, like so. Once we have it ready, we can select a scene that we're going to use, like this one that we have generated right now. And from then on, we can select a series of previewed views that have been imported from our CYPE Architecture model, if you recall correctly. So in this case, for example, I'm going to set a ground floor view, and we can zoom freely throughout our viewport here, so we can center the view into our shed. We can also set a scale in case we wanted to work with standardized scales, like for example 1:50, or we can set a custom scale divider like so. Let's set it, for example, to 1:50, and we can also set different kinds of modes for our image. For example, we can set it to a monochrome image, which will be more easily understandable, as if it were a regular CAD drawing, like so. You can also set the image quality, the background, and if you want it to have a frame or not. In this case, I'm more than happy with the final result, so let's click once more. And as you will see, it will automatically set our viewport ready to be worked on top of. So I'm going to switch, for example, to the titles tab right here, sorry, to the tabs layer here for the titles. And let's start adding some more drawing elements. As you can see, we can add lines, arcs, polygons, text boxes, tags, text, tables. And one of my favorite tools in the Drawing Elements tab is the tags tool. This reads all the data that has been inserted from the Ifc file, because you have to remember that right now we are working directly with the Ifc files that we have generated previously. So the tag, what will do is that it will read whichever element you select from here. So for example, let's select this door right here, or this wall, for example. And once we set the tag, you will see that it automatically reads all the information from the element that we have selected previously, like so. We could also add, if you wanted to, dimensions like areas and linear, both perpendicular and oblique dimensions. And we can also work with the organization of the drawing of each element. In this case, I'm going to send this viewport to the back, so it won't interfere with the rest of elements that I'm going to add right now, like the tag we have added before. We can also freely move it around, as well as edit its contents. Now that we have finished with this basic introduction to drawing the styles and the templates, you will recognize here in the Edit tab another tool that I have talked about before, and that is Substitute Text. This is a database that we can customize here with user variables or predefined variables. And this, what we will do is that it will take the text that I've shown you before that are preceded and ended with % marks into the value that we have inserted here. So in this case, for example, we have these substitute text that will be automatically changed with these values. So for example, let's change this value for the name of the project. And you will see that this value will be automatically changed in each individual sheet, like this one, or for example, these other ones as well. This will be the basic overview. Sorry, tell me.
Yeah, one question that comes to mind is, like you were showing the spaces, are you also able to tag those spaces?
Indeed, you can set some basic tags in Sipe Architecture, and you can import them through the Ifc file into other programs, like for example, SiteTherm loads, which my colleague Daniel will be showing you the next week, not the following week.
But in these views, are you able to, for example, tag in elevation or plan the actual room name?
All the tags that we are working with here in OpenBIM layout are meant as a way of getting information for your composition of sheets, like the ones that we have made here. So this would be the final result that we're going to send to the printer. This is not something that we would send to other programs inside the BIM Server Center flow. This would be an endpoint inside one of the proposed BIM Server Center workflows.
Right, so, yeah, it's just that it's quite common, right, to have a plan that has the name of the rooms, or even a section that will have the text of, like, this is the kitchen or whatever. And I was just wondering if that's automated or if that would have to be typed in manually if you were preparing a sheet like this, yeah.
In this case, up until now, it has to be done manually, but in the future, I'm hopeful that this will be all automatically added. For example, in this ground floor view, you will see that we have some dimensions, some areas, as well as some different tags already added for the different areas. In this case, the areas have been automatically calculated, and if you are working with tags, in this case, because if you recall correctly, in the 3D Scene library, I have checked off the spaces, but in case I would have checked on the spaces, if I were to use the tag on top of them, it would be able to read all the data that I have inserted before in Sipe Architecture.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think there's another question.
Yeah, there's a question, David. I was going to answer it, but you can answer it. What's the difference between Sipe Architecture and Ifc Builder?
Ifc Builder is the granddaddy of Sipe Architecture, and it was one of the first solutions that we had here at Sipe to start modeling a basic architectural model so you can work directly with MEP solutions. I would strongly recommend to work with Sipe Architecture because it is way more flexible and it has a way deeper definition of all the different structural, architectural, and installation elements of your project. So Ifc Builder is becoming more deprecated, and in the near future will be partially abandoned in favor of Sipe Architecture.
Okay. All right, and I think we have to be finishing up in the next 5 minutes or so. So, right, Edwin?
Yeah, I think if I don't know how much more we have, or if we want to leave some time for questions.
Well, I believe we've finished with the description of all the programs, and in this case, the last step would be to, once we have all the different sheets ready, to go to the printing station. So we are finished right now, and in case you have any more questions, bring them on.
Perfect. Anybody wants to just turn on their microphone and ask a question?
I was just wondering if you could maybe, yeah, just print one of the sheets and maybe zoom in. Like, is it printed as raster or a vector format?
I believe that right now it's printed with both raster and scalable elements at the same time. And what we're seeing right now with the viewports is mostly raster, but in the future we will also turn into scalable elements. So in this case, let me generate some PDF files for this, and let's see more or less how it would look like. If you recall correctly, one of the tools that we have used before, the viewports tool, allows you to set a standard definition in points per inch in case you want to print it and set a standard definition.
All right. Any other questions? Meanwhile. Don't be shy.
I'll ask another one if people are.
Thanks,
still,
Edwin.
yeah.
What's the pricing? The pricing for this Sipe architecture is free. It sounds crazy, but yes, it's a free software, and so's the other one. And let me explain to you why. It's a software we developed. You know, we started in structural design software, and we have a very wide, we have a very big customer base. So, you know, we also have a lot of BIM software that we bring out, that we offer it for free as we go developing it more and expanding it. But it's a completely free usable software. All of these solutions. The only one right now that I think has a cost is OpenBIM Quantities, which is a real powerful tool to generate your bill of quantities. And it's also a very low cost. And whichever software of ours has a price, it's always a perpetual license that you can have as long as you like. And we'll soon come out with subscriptions too, but we're always going to have both options. And in addition, you always have customer service directly from the developer. Even as you're trying any of the software, if you have any questions during this presentation, well, somebody already put it, support. Thank you, David. You're welcome to contact us and we'll get back to you immediately. Anything else? For the person that mentioned about IFC Builder, the only situation right now when IFC Builder is a good program to use. We have a program that is a fire dynamic simulator that it feeds off the National Institute of Technology. It actually just interprets the data from the National Institute of Technology's FDS and smoke view. And that particular analysis engine requires a very simple architectural model. And IFC Builder is perfect for those type of things when you're going to do a very complex analysis of the simulation of fires, etc. And that would probably be like the only reason why to use that. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll be joining you, I think it's in 2 weeks. And Diego, can you say hello, or are you there? He's the presenter of our structural software, but anyways, he might not be connected now. But we'll see everybody back again in the next couple of weeks. And thank you so much for organizing this, David. I'm sorry, Edwin, and for your presentation, David. I think it was very good.
If I can just sneak one last question.
Yeah, I saw it.
Just thinking of workflows, like, because again, I think most people on this call are likely using Revit. If you export to IFC, I guess potentially you're able to create your own views using this OpenBIM layout. Is that correct?
David? Hello? Hello, David, can you hear me? Oh, I don't know. I think we've lost him there.
Either, yeah, but I guess my understanding is that you'd use IFC Uploader, which is one program to upload the IFC file that you have on your desktop from Revit. And from there, then I guess you could open it with this layout tool and yeah.
Yes, he's showing it right now. I guess that we can't hear him, but yeah, he's showing. We have a plugin for Revit, and then we have plugins for all the other IFC softwares also, so that you can work with either of them. Okay, and let me see. There was a question. Great. How? All right. With other BIM, how, if possible, with other BIM platforms, it can communicate with anything that is generating IFC files via either the uploader, via the Revit plugin, or also for structures, we have a StruBIM uploader for importing projects from eTabs, etc. You know, and throughout the presentations, we'll get deeper into this. And if anybody needs a little bit more information, you're always welcome to reach out to us or to myself, which I'm gonna also put here my email, and ask me a direct question. I'll make sure we get back to you on it. Okay. Well, I think I sent this the wrong. I wanted to put it to everybody. Okay, let me see, meeting a model, it went hand off to another designer, fill back, it's transferable. Yes, the model is always transferable. And, you know, with this, for example, it helps you reduce the amount of Revits that you have throughout your office. A lot of times, if you're working with one of our software, everybody doesn't have to have Revit because you can import back and forth into that platform. Okay, well,
one last thing.
yes, no, of
I
course.
thought wasn't there augmented reality or something?
Oh yeah, there's an augmented reality. Let me just show you very quick. I don't know if I'm gonna actually share. You prefer that I share my screen, or do you have that video from YouTube that you could put on very quick, David? If you can hear me, it's the augmented reality. If not, I have it here very quick, and I'll go ahead and share it because it's also free, and it's an app that you can download, both augmented and virtual reality. Hold on 1 second. Okay, because we have it from Revit project also that you do it. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen instead. Okay, everybody can see my screen? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, and then this is just a minute, and this is if we would import.
Yeah, so I guess this would be another workflow then to.
Yeah, this is another part of the workflow that you would be able to add to it, you know, to do walkthroughs or to do a clash detection, which we'll show later on. We also have a clash detection software that you can use to do your actual walkthrough, and all the elements that you have entered in your BIM model, you're able to identify them inside this virtual reality app also. So it's a quite interesting program, and it's free both for Apple and Android.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And
all right.
I know people have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate spending your time with us.
Yeah.